Hey there. If you're a frequent listener to our show, you already know that our show is brought to you by our friends over at Artillery Sports. But what you may not know is that Artillery Sports helps athletes of all types win on and off the course and court. They do this by selling quality, durable, and precision manufactured sports equipment that keeps you in the game, while also using a portion of the profits to provide the funding needed to care for our nation's veterans. With Artillery Sports, it's more than just a game. So head over to artillerysports.com today to buy the quality equipment you need to keep you in the game and to help our nation's veterans at the same time. That's artillerysports.com. Make sure you head on over there today. Oh, and use the code DOCFIRST to get 10% off your first order. Welcome to Documentary First, an inside look at documentary filmmaking. I'm your host, Christian Taylor, and a documentary filmmaker myself. And today we have something very different in store. Recently, I was a guest on a podcast called The Movie Rob Minute. It's a unique podcast done by a podcaster named Rob, who is incredibly interested in movies. He lives over in Israel. He actually is a former service member in Israel. He's an American, but long ago he moved over to Israel and he really liked it there and decided to stay. Because he's so passionate about movies, he decided to start his own podcast. And he has a very strange take on what he likes to do. He wants to review minutes. No, he doesn't. He wants to review movies minute by minute. And this is what I mean. He wanted me to be on the podcast during the D-Day era, or like time of year, and he wanted me to review Saving Private Ryan minute by minute. Well, not me exactly reviewing it minute by minute, but he wanted me to be on an episode with him as we talked about 1 minute out of all of the minutes in Saving Private Ryan. It was something I had never contemplated before and didn't think I would enjoy very much, but it happened to be quite entertaining. And it was really something unique, quite frankly. And the interest was enhanced when I was able to invite one of my college best buddies, Corey Johnson, to join us. Corey, if you look him up on IMDb, is a friend, but he's also a very talented actor. And he was in the movie Saving Private Ryan, also in Band of Brothers, also in many other movies that you may recognize him in if you look him up on IMDb. Anyway, we were really excited to have Corey on the show with us. And it was great to have his insight into the characters and he knows so many people. He has so many stories. And as you will discover, he absolutely loves to talk. And, he knows that himself. So he'll reference that himself many times in our conversations. Now, you may get sick of hearing us both talk because these episodes really tended to go rather long. And over the course of the next few weeks, we are going to share this with you because they are actually very interesting. John is I call him John. I'm sorry. I hoped I wouldn't do that, but his real name is John Johnson. And his stage name is Corey. And so I try to call him Corey as best I can, but sometimes I slip up. Anyway, Corey is from New Orleans, and you'll love his accent. I hope you enjoy listening to him talk and also tell all of his incredible stories. And I hope you'll get to know Rob. He is incredibly brilliant and knows so much about movies. So I hope you'll enjoy listening to this episode of Documentary First, where we believe everybody has a story to tell, and you can be the one to tell it. So enjoy listening, everybody.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to minute 131 of season 8 of Movie Rob Minute, the daily podcast, where we foobar our way through the 1998 Steven Spielberg award-winning film Saving Private Ryan, 1 minute at a time. I'm Rob, and this week I have a real treat for you guys. I have 2 guests that will be joining me all week. The first one is Christian Johnson Taylor, who is an actress, a filmmaker, producer. When I'm going to have her back later this season also for another special episode. So welcome, Christian.
Thank you very much. So wonderful to be here with you.
And our other guest is Corey Johnson, who is an actor. And I didn't know this at the time, but he's in this movie. So we're
Yeah.
going to touch upon the stuff that he did in this movie and in some other movies also. So welcome to the show, Corey.
Thank you. It's good to be here as well. Yeah, there's no reason you should know I was in the movie unless you sort of dug through the cast list for some inane reason. If you blink, you'll
You
miss
think
me.
I didn't? Of course I
Huh?
did.
No.
Of
Yeah.
course I did. When back in the episodes that you or the
Yeah.
episode you appeared in, I did discuss it, but
Yeah.
I didn't know you at the time.
No,
Now
exactly.
I know you.
Exactly.
I've seen you. We've we've joked around a little bit.
Yes, we've
So
broken bread. Yes, I hear you.
yes.
He also has the wonderful pleasure of being one of my favorite college classmates. So yeah, at Catholic University in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Way back when.
Way back when. That's
how
a
we know
while
each
ago.
other.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that through Christian is how I got to Corey. So
Right. Right.
the
So many
connection
people tell
is
me
there.
that. I only got to you through her.
And through Joe Amodei, who you've had a guest on here before, who's my distributor, is how I ended up here on your.
That's right. Because Joe and I got to Joe from Steve J. Rubin.
And how is that connection?
Steve J. Rubin. Well, on my first season, I did The Great Escape.
Okay.
And I found an article that Steve J. Rubin had written about it, and I contacted him. And he was able to. He was really excited to be on the first season of my show, and he joined me. And he actually also got me in touch with the late great David McCallum, who I interviewed on that first season also.
Wow.
He gave me the greatest line that I never expected to get. I knew that there was one thing. I don't know if either of you know the backstory about David McCallum and and everything that happened between him and Charles Bronson.
No.
No. Was it not
they
good?
shared a wife. They shared a wife.
Wow. I met him at the Utah Beach Museum like 2018, like the first year I was there, I think, or 19. But I did not learn that fact. That's very fascinating.
So David McCallum was married to Jill Ireland.
Oh my
and
God!
When
I didn't know that.
And when they were filming The Great Escape, he joined him in England.
Yeah.
And during the course of that time that they were there, he also got to know Charles Bronson. And again, I don't know all the details, and I don't really care, and I don't need to know the details.
No.
Okay, but somehow in the end, David McCallum and Jill Ireland got divorced, and then she married Charles Bronson. So I said to myself, when I'm doing this interview, that is the one topic I'm going to stay so far away from.
Yeah.
I don't need it or anything like that.
No.
And then he brought it up.
Right.
And
was it?
And he said that it was his great escape.
Oh wow. Well, that's lucky then, because I was going to say, usually, like, you look at, it's like the Animal House thing. Boone and Katie, married 1965, divorced 1969. You go, it's never the love story for the ages. Bronson and Jill Ireland was a love story for the ages.
That's right.
I think she died of cancer or something, and he nursed her through it. He never left her side,
Wow.
And and so it's good, not good, but it's great to hear that David McCallum was sort of ambivalent about the marriage to the point where
because at that point he had been remarried for 50 years.
Well, there you go.
To his his new wife.
Yeah.
And so he said that he had he not had that whole situation not happened,
he would have never met. You see, that's it's amazing the way life works out.
Sure is.
Yeah. And he also told me stories about some of the other actors in the movie at the time. There were, when I recorded with him, I think it was 4 years ago, there were only 3 of the actors from the movie that were still alive.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was the most prominent of the 3. And he unfortunately has passed since then. But it was such a great opportunity to be able to speak to him. So, okay.
And how did he know Joe?
A little bit of a tangent.
How did he know Joe? How did he know Joe Amodei?
No, he doesn't know Joe. He knows Steve J. Rubin.
And how does
who had interviewed him? Steve, I don't know if you know who Steve J. Rubin is.
No.
Okay, so he's like an expert on James Bond. He's written like books on James Bond. He's written books on World War II movies. He's very connected in Hollywood, from what I understand. And he's actually going to be on in a few weeks also. He's on. He's going to be on this season also. I think in maybe a little bit of about a month from now or something like that. And so Steve told me, he says, "Hey, if you're going to talk about somebody, if you're looking for other people for The Great Escape," he says, "I got my friend Joe Amodei who named his production company after Steve McQueen's character Virgil Hicks. You know, the company is called Virgil Production." So I got in touch with Joe, and
I see.
and that he also joined me for 5 episodes. And I think it was about 2.5 years ago. I was visiting in the States, and Joe and I were supposed to get together and have breakfast together one morning, and then he got in touch with me the day before and said that he has to babysit his grandchildren, so he's going to have to cancel on me. I never got to meet him face to face, and then I continued my connection to Joe, and then when I did It's a Wonderful Life for my 6th season, so he contacted me and said that he loves that movie and he wants to also be on it. And then he got me in touch with Donna Reed's daughter.
Yes, Mary
Brilliant.
Owen.
Mary Owen. That's
Mary
right.
Owen is who introduced me to Joe Amodei, because she saw my film at a film festival, loved it, and said, Joe Amodei has to see this and distribute your film. Look at that.
There you go.
Listen,
That's right.
let me just say, networking in Hollywood is what it's all about. It's
That's right.
really who you know.
My
That's
favorite
right.
line in It's a Wonderful Life. You got to remember, this is that when they go back, they're showing them in high school when they open up the swimming pool.
Yes,
They're
love that.
dancing by the swimming pool. Yeah.
And who's the guy who opens the swimming pool? You
The
know
kid
who
who
that is?
the one who got jilted by her.
No, but do you know who the actor is?
No.
Oh,
He's Alfalfa from The Little Rascal.
Was he
is
really?
that right? He's so cute.
Well, the guy looks at him just before he opens it. And do you remember the line he said when he says, they're dancing on the thing, and that cord is right below a swimming pool, or right, and the swimming pool's right below there, and there's the switch, and you see the thing going up. But just before, and these are high school kids. There's no way you would have a line like this in a movie today. He walks over to him. The guy comes in. Alfalfa's in profile, and the other guy comes in behind him, and he's just like Iago. He goes, "What's the matter, Othello?" And it's just the most brilliant, literate line I've ever heard, ostensibly a child, a high school kid, utter.
That's
What's
awesome.
the matter, Othello?
It
Yeah,
means
it
he
was
had a
brilliant.
he had a good education.
Yes, exactly. But you used to make
Well,
movies like that.
What's even more interesting is for that line to land with the
Yes.
audience. The
Yes.
audience had to
Has to
have
be literate. Exactly.
literate
Exactly.
audience, and that's what I find fascinating.
And now you get actors. We could have a whole podcast about this. Actors who are mic'd, actors who don't have to talk any louder than this, because they can project on a mic all the way across. And it's like, what's connected about that? It's like being an opera singer and going, "Oh, I'm not going to project. I'm just going to sing this tone like this." The whole point of singing opera. Yeah.
John, we're taking this in a whole different direction.
I know. You said 3 hours.
This is great.
Let's get on the subject. Come on,
Okay.
Christian's
Okay,
going to
well,
yell at me.
Just to give you the full quote that you mentioned. So the friend comes over and says, "What's the matter, Othello? Jealous?" And he goes, "Did you know there's a swimming pool under this floor? And did you know that button behind you causes this floor to open up?
Open up. Yeah.
And did you further know that George Bailey is dancing right over that crack? Now I've got the key."
That's just great.
How do you know that line by line?
Wait, let me guess. You
think I
looked
know
it
that
up
by
on the
heart?
IMDb.
No, not at all. I looked it up in my files.
There you
You
go.
know,
Yeah,
I have the scripts
you
from
did
Yeah.
do
from
this
all the
minute
movies
by
that I
minute.
did.
Yeah.
What's the
That's right.
matter, Othello? It's just the way he says it. It's so
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes.
Oh God.
That's
There are
great.
some
love it.
great lines, and some great moments in that movie that you can't have today.
That's true.
Correct. Again, there's still something that I'm always shocked every time I says it, when Mary's mother calls down and says, "What are you doing down there?" And she says, "He's making violent love to me."
Love to me.
And again,
Right.
nowadays that's a
Right.
completely different connotation than it was
Exactly.
in 1946.
Exactly.
Because it always shocked me that that's what they're what.
Nothing
That's what she said
I
to her
don't
mother.
want him to do, Even that would get her in trouble.
Yeah, probably.
Anyway,
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Saving Private Ryan at this point.
let's delve.
That's right. So minute 131 begins with Mike moving some rocks and ends with Miller looking up for help from above. So we basically finished things on Friday with the men realizing that the tanks are getting closer, and
Yeah.
that they're hoping that they're going to come down this little street. And we talked a little bit about it on Friday, that Tom Sizemore's character Mike is trying to do all that he can while he's in this ditch to keep himself as hidden as possible, and he starts moving some rocks,
Yeah.
which I just think is really funny, because the whole ground is shaking.
Yeah.
So moving a little rock here or there is probably
Yeah.
not going to make much of a difference.
Yep.
But
The thing about it is in that war, you would think, man, how many pairs of socks can they give us? And what are we going to do with this tar, And yet they made sticky bombs, because there's a reason they were called the greatest generation. They were the most resourceful people out of necessity and from birth, because somebody said, look, we want you to join the army, and they said, it's going to be hard, it's going to be, you're going to work, you're going to this, and they went, they didn't hear anything they hadn't been through. And then they said, we'll give you three squares and a cot, and they went, excuse me. They said, we'll give you 3 squares and a cot. Most of them had never eaten 3 meals a day. Some of them had never slept in a bed. And so they said that, and they said, I'm in. Where do I sign? Nothing anyone could do to them was going to put them off. And so this
that's
was
right.
such a resourceful group of people that, I mean, that moment of him moving the rocks, Tom Hanks looking up, it's just the idea that you go, he's hoping for a higher power. He's praying for a higher power. And the genius of Steven Spielberg is you never expect what ends up happening to happen. You
Correct.
think it's going to be a sticky bomb. You think it's going to be some slip up. Somebody's going to save the day, and you don't expect the Deus ex machina, literally a Deus ex machina. That you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, of course.
Theater person,
Of course.
right? Yeah, because it is a machine acting like a god. I mean, and it just, when the planes come overhead, it's like the wave of relief that went through the audience at that moment. You can't. You could tell that people knew this was the end for these guys.
Right.
Sure. I have a different take on the moving of the rock. So, the saying, there are no atheists in foxholes. And I've talked to a lot of these guys who were, no matter where they were, trying to hide, where they're moving rocks or digging ditches deeper or putting, branches over their foxhole, because they will actually admit now at 98 or 100 years old that, of course, we were scared.
They were terrified.
Of course we were terrified.
Right.
We'd be stupid to think we were not scared.
Right.
Well, if they weren't scared, then most of them wouldn't have had a problem talking about it afterwards. But that's part of the reason probably why most of them kept it bottled up, because they didn't want to show everyone that that they were actually in a situation where they were scared,
terrified for their lives. Yeah, reliving. You don't want to relive that. You want to forget that.
Yeah,
correct.
I mean, and the reason, let me just say that I know the things. I mean, I'm here because the film that I made, it's called The Girl Who Wore Freedom, and it's the story of D-Day, but from the perspective of the French. And I started working on that film back in 2016. So it's now 2025. I've been, working on this film for 9 years now. I continue to talk and work with World War II veterans as well as currently serving soldiers. And so I have a unique perspective on, this film, simply because I've spent so much time with these guys. And, one of the reasons that I've heard that they don't talk about things as well is 2 reasons. One, they've told me when they try, people don't want to listen. Their eyes glaze over and they don't really seem that interested.
I find that so shocking, because if someone were to tell me these stories, I would love to hear them.
Yeah, but you have to understand that the wars we've grown up with aren't absolute. They're wars of choice.
Correct.
This was an either or situation. The World War II and World War One. I mean, World War One, basically, they called it the war to end all wars. They used to call it the Great War.
The Great War, exactly.
Before we had to number them. Do you know?
Correct.
And the only reason, I mean, this is what's dangerous about the time we're living in, is one of the only reasons we haven't had another war is because of things like the United Nation and the
And
Marshall Plan
deterrence.
and deterrent, right? Uh, but this was an absolute. This war was either we win or we lose. It wasn't, well, we can sort of back out and there'll be honor in this and, we'll let them go. And it wasn't that. There was no intent. Germany and Japan had no intention of losing. They had no intent. They were in it for, absolute, everybody was all in on this poker hand.
That's right.
So
For sure.
yeah, it wasn't, you don't see like what happened in Afghanistan, what happened in Vietnam, even to a degree, what happened in Kuwait with Kuwait. I mean, that was an overwhelming military firepower that completely destroyed another country. And yet we still said, okay, all right, you can have this and you can keep those and you can do this because it was as important to keep that country in with a semblance of governance instead of going in and it's like the Pottery Barn, you break it, you bought it, instead of going in and governing that country ourselves. That wasn't what especially at the time, but that wasn't what we were supposed to be about. But in World War II, we entered that war because freedom and democracy, freedom first, but democracy to a degree, the freedom for people to choose the way they live their lives had to be saved, and
Well, and
so
not only that, we were all on the same page
yeah,
with that idea.
yeah. There was no separate agendas.
There was no, I mean, everybody, it was very simple. It was black and white.
Right.
It was, we were
Right.
all on the same
Right.
page, not
Right.
just, the Americans, but the Americans
No.
and all the allies. And there was
Right.
one single objective, and we were all on the same page. And ever since World War II, that has been different. Now,
Yes.
to address what you were saying, that it's hard to imagine that people don't want to listen, that's because you are in a very niche audience. And the people that are listening to this, probably in that very niche audience. And I have the people that watch my film, niche audience,
The other thing, Christian, is your movie, your documentary is telling a story that I believe at first Americans don't feel like they need to hear. And then it's only when you listen to it and you go, God, this is amazing. I didn't know this,
Right. We think
Yeah.
we're thankful.
That's what I felt.
We
When
think
I
we're
saw
thankful.
your movie, that's what I thought. I said
Yeah.
to myself, I never even thought to even,
Consider
it
that.
never even crossed my mind to consider the fact
Yes.
that
Yes.
the French people would, 80 years on, still be so happy about the fact that that the Allies showed up. I mean, again, anyone who's seen Band of Brothers, they have all the parades, both in in Holland and also in France when they're going through
Yeah.
there and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But that's at the moment. But here we're talking 80 years later, it still
Yeah.
resonates. And that's just,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those of you that are listening, my film, The Girl Who Wore Freedom, you can find out information about that on thegirlwhoworefreedom.com. There's a 4-minute trailer right when you get there and you can click on it. It's actually John's voice, who's the narrator there. He was the very first person that I called when I had the idea to make the film. Like I said, we've known each other since college, and, I knew he had this history with World War II films. He's a phenomenal narrator and but an actor. And, of course, he had this connection to Tom Hanks. And I was hoping that there would be some way I could connect or have support or whatever. But mostly I wanted to know, do you think this is a good idea? And in the end, what the crux of this story is that, the French have this way of being truly grateful and showing their gratitude that's completely different than anything that Americans have ever done. And
Grateful and gracious, because there's nothing diminutive about them being this grateful. It's a celebration of their gratefulness,
Yeah.
which is, a tribute
Correct.
to their culture.
And it's not just the French, however. I've learned it's also the people in Luxembourg, and it's also the people in Holland. It's the people in, Belgium. It's it's the people in the Netherlands. I have traveled all over, and it is the same, because when you have been oppressed for that long, it's 4 years. Most people don't know their history enough to know that it was 4 years. It's like the high school or college. When you've been oppressed that long and under that thumb, and all of a sudden you're liberated from that, that gratitude is so deep. We've never been occupied in the US, so we do not know that kind of. So when I saw that gratitude for freedom that had been passed down from, parents to children or grandparents to grandchildren, I was stunned. And I thought, we have to look through the French eyes, and we have to understand what true gratitude really looks like. And what I learned was, as they listened to the veterans and as they spent time with the veterans, I watched it change the veterans. I watched it be like the fountain of youth for them. They started out the trip, old and kind of, I don't know, rickety. But by the time they were done, they were dancing. They were happy.
Yeah.
Because people, for sure, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
So
what I'm saying is, people don't listen. And so that's why veterans didn't share. And the other reason that they don't share is because it is so traumatic that to repeat or share any of that stuff is so incredibly painful. And so now today, we are learning that by talking, it is the healing, and that's the way to heal PTSD. But back then, nobody knew that. And so everything was stuffed down. And so
it's the American way as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you just sort of held it in.
Have you, either of you, seen the movie Memorial Day from 2012?
No.
With James I can't remember his name right now.
Franco?
Woods?
No, I said James. No.
I'm just guessing. What other Jameses are in there? Franco, Woods.
No. Hang on a second. That's where editing comes in here later. James Cromwell. Okay. James Cromwell. So it's a movie about it takes place in numerous timelines, right? It's about this this soldier fighting in Iraq who is remembering a day, I don't know, 10 years earlier, where he was at his grandparents' farm, and he found a chest filled with World War II memorabilia when this kid was 13. And so he wants to hear the stories from his grandfather as to what happened during World War II. So the grandfather is played by James Cromwell. And so basically, I'm not going to give away the entire movie, but the idea is that the grandfather says it's too painful, but I'm willing to tell you 3 stories. Pick three items from the chest, and I will tell you their stories. And again, it's just amazing, because we see stuff that happened in World War II. We see stuff that's happening in Iraq. We see this connection between a grandfather and a 13-year-old kid. About the whole idea of having to find ways to open up and tell your story. You might want to hold it in, but if you hold it in for too long, you're not going to be able to pass on those stories, so that people won't know what you went through.
Right.
So I actually just rewatched it yesterday because, after talking to you the other day, Christian, it reminded me that I wanted to rewatch that movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, I tell you, it is really important. And if there are any veterans listening to this podcast, I say this all the time. It is crucially important that if you have served and you have never shared your story, even if you've never been in actual combat, it is really important that you share your story, particularly with your family. And the reasons are that civilians don't understand anything about the military. They don't understand the questions to ask you, but they do want to know. They genuinely want to know, but they don't understand anything about the military. So where do they start? And the thing is, once you begin to share, it draws you closer. And if you have been in combat, it does begin to heal. And it does pass down the stories to those that are younger than you. So, please do share your stories. Learn from this conversation and don't hold them in.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. All right, let's continue talking about Saving Private Ryan.
Yes, let's do. Okay, so he's moving the rock.
You know what? You know what, I'm even gonna I'm gonna divert a little bit also because Corey, you were in this movie, so let's through the course of this week maybe we'll talk each day a little bit about your experiences when you made this movie. But the first question is how did you how did you get the part? Do you remember?
Like the same way I got everything else. It was sheer unmitigated luck. Um, no, one of my professors at college said there are three things that make an actor: talent, luck, and perseverance. And the interesting thing he said was any two, and you can make it. But if you've only got one, you won't make it. I always thought I was reasonably talented. And it was just luck that I was in the right place at the right time when they were casting it because, they obviously a lot of things were cast in Los Angeles. And in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, they used to come over here and cast.
Wait a second. You have to, you can't just say come over here. John
London.
John is living in London.
London.
After college, he decided to go to RADA, which is the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts.
No, I went to Central.
Central Academy of Central Academy of Dramatic Arts.
Speech and drama. Yeah.
And he's lived there ever since. So that's where he is.
Right.
And by the way, he said he thought he was reasonably talented. He's one of the most talented actors I've ever met. He's phenomenal. And so let's just set that record straight.
So anyway, I was lucky and I persevered because the lack of talent was palpable in my no, anyway, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time when they were casting some of the smaller roles. And I think, I'm a big believer in luck in the sense of people always think, look, that you say, if it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. Luck is luck. You determine that it's bad luck, but it's like, God closes a door, he opens a window. There's always something else going on. It's up to you to be able to see it. And sometimes we're so mired in what we think we want to be or what we think we need that it's difficult to see what it is we're being offered. I never had that problem. Being an American over here, I was always grateful to sort of be working. And it's not like I did a lot of work, but I did enough work to where I could live a reasonably, happy life. But anyway, I was offered a very small part in Saving Private Ryan, and I was booked for a couple of weeks. And
now, didn't they film it over in London?
In Ireland.
In Ireland.
In Ireland.
And so did they cast the leading roles in LA and then the
God, yeah. Oh yeah.
And then the smaller roles they cast in over there?
Yeah. That's what I was saying. They in the 70s and 80s.
It makes sense.
They used to come over here with, there were all kinds of movies that came over here. Yanks, John Schlesinger's movie, came over here after
with Richard Gere.
I think they have Richard Gere, and it came over here and he filled out some of the smaller roles. It's like a who's who of American Canadian actors in London. They'd film in London, they'd film in France because it was cheaper to do that than to film in America. And then gradually London and Europe became expensive, and so they moved to Eastern Europe. And, Czechoslovakia, Poland, even Germany. I shot a movie in Germany in 92 that took place during the Cold War. So I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and I got cast in this movie. I'm pretty sure I auditioned for one of the main characters, and just it didn't work out. So I was offered this one. Now, we were there for a couple of weeks. I remember we flew in on a Saturday into Dublin and then drove 2 hours and change to Rosslare Harbor, where it was being filmed. And as I remember, our bed and breakfast was sort of within 5 or 10 minutes walk of where the set was. And you could go and look and see they would have these huge, what are they called, Christian? The tank busters, where they'd have the huge
a hedgehog.
A hedgehog. They have these huge steel things.
The Czech hedgehogs.
And you'd look at them and it'd be like, at the end of the day, it was like, wow, that just looks amazing. And the sea is washing in. And then this runner would go up and stand under one, lift it up and walk it up the beach. And you think, okay, that's just another illusion shattered. But I remember I had a costume fitting or something, and you show up on Monday, and or I don't know if we showed up on Monday, but what happened is someone called our hotel and said, yeah, we're not going to get to you guys today. I was like, okay. But tomorrow we'll get you in and we'll sort of talk you through some stuff. So tomorrow we went in and again, we were there for like a few hours in the morning. We met a few people. I remember not meeting, but I saw Tom Sizemore and he was sitting like in his trailer or something. And I just went up to him and I said, "Hey, Tom, I'm Corey. I've got a small part in the movie. I just wanted to say hi and introduce myself." And he like, because Tom Sizemore was not sort of, the easiest person to sort of approach. He's a very intense man. And he just kind of looked at me like, "I don't know you. Why are you standing in front of me?" And he went, "Uh-huh." And I just left. And I remember like, okay. But all of these
He
guys,
doesn't seem like that,
yeah,
He does.
well,
He does.
I'll tell
He
you,
does.
I'll
I
tell
mean,
you another story
there was
about
the
him.
ultimate that he was given an ultimatum by Spielberg about this movie.
Well, he was told that I believe he was told he was going to have to submit urine tests
That's right.
to make sure
Wait,
he
And
was
wait, wait. I
if he
clean.
haven't
fails
heard
it,
this.
and if he fails them, any of them, they're gonna recast his role and reshoot every one of the scenes.
They were going to recast him. Yeah.
So he did drugs. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, he
Yes,
was notorious that he did. I think he did. I want to say it was Heat, but I don't believe he did another movie with Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro really rated him as an actor. He thought he was great. And Robert De Niro was friendly with his family. He knew his mother. And Tom was brought up in Detroit, I believe, and one of his brothers, I want to say, died in Vietnam.
Hmm.
I could be wrong, but he had sort of a rough childhood, and was, I mean, self-anesthetizing. And his mother was very worried and called Robert De Niro and said, "You've got to help him." And so they intervened. Robert De Niro and his own mother said, "You've got to get help," and got him clean for a period of time. And this was right around Private Ryan. I think it was after Heat. Around it may have
yeah.
been
He
before
came
Heat.
out in '95.
Right. It may
So,
have been before Heat, but I think it was after Heat, and then he was clean for Private Ryan. Now, by the time I did another movie that was awful in 2002, right around the time Tom was shooting Relic, and he was determined that he could do this movie, and he had like scraggly hair and a full beard when he was doing Relic, and he said, "No, no, no, I can do it. I'll just shave the beard off." And they said, "You've got the." He said, "They'll put a fake beard on a wig," and it was like, "Dude, no, you can't." And so there was an idea that maybe he's not sort of living in the real world. Uh, Now I saw him years ago at a Comic-Con, and he was giving a speech. He was talking to people, and he was very forthcoming because he had had the whole Heidi Fleiss thing, and he had gone to prison, and he told a story about being in prison. He said, "All these guys who were my friends, none of them came to visit me in prison except for Tom Hardy."
interesting. Hmm.
Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy is one of the, probably going to ruin his reputation. And if he ever sees me, he'll punch me hard in the face. One of the nicest, sweetest guys, really. He's just a lovely man, and very he deserves what he's getting because he's been through a lot. And again, very, very, very talented, very focused, very single-minded on what he does, but didn't let his whatever his demons were that were pursuing him, he did not let them get him,
Hmm.
which is, I mean, it's a struggle. The struggle is real. But anyway,
Anyway, so you're saying that Spielberg said,
Tuesday, Tuesday we show up and we meet a few people at sit time, and then at lunch they go home. We're not going to get to you today. Wednesday, same thing. And we used to go back to this bed and breakfast we were staying in, and they would literally say to us for dinner, we'd have 10 or 12 of us sitting around this table, and they'd go, "What do you have?" And it was like, "Well, what have you got?" "Well, we've got fish, we've got a lovely salmon, and we've got chicken, and there's some steak, lovely Irish beef." We say, yeah, we're all American. I'll have a steak, 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 steak. By the end of the week, we just didn't call it dinner. We called it our beefing because it was just, no one was ordering fish or chicken. We were getting this Irish steak. It was sirloin. It was gorgeous. So, I could have put on 20, 30 pounds just by having dinner at this place. Fortunately, Friday rolled around, Thursday rolled around, and they said, "Look, we're definitely going to get to you tomorrow. With any luck, we're going to shoot you out tomorrow." And I was booked for 2 weeks. I was going, "I'm here next week." They said, "Well, we'll see what happens." So sure enough, we start the sequence where the ships land on the beach and all these guys come running forward and machine guns, squibs are going off and bombs are going off. And I can remember looking at this sequence and thinking, you got to be kidding me. There were like Irish army regulars who were running along the beach who knew what they were doing. There were amputees who were like carrying fake arms and looking around. And I was just like, this is just madness. It's chaos. And I could sit there and laugh about it, but that was exactly what he wanted to capture. And he
Correct.
did brilliantly. You know, he
So
did
you're
absolutely
saying,
brilliantly.
so how much would you say when you saw the film was what you saw on the beach versus CGI that was done in
No.
post?
There was no, as far as I know, there was very little CGI. CGI in the terms of you might have tweaked the sound. CGI in terms of I can't speak to whether or not the blood was fake. I know that 99 times out of 100, when you see someone bleeding in a movie today, it's probably fake.
Right.
Okay. So I can't speak to the CGI. I do remember, this could have been Thursday, I'm not certain. They had tramps buried in the sand. And these soldiers would run over the tramps, and as they ran over them, they would trip something that would flip the tramp, and they would be flung
They
into
would go
the
flying.
air. But they had to know how to trip the tramp. And
Right.
one of these guys, either someone tripped it and he didn't step on it, he was just off it, and this tramp came up and literally broke his leg.
Oh,
Whoa.
And so they're going like the guy's screaming on the beach. There are people standing around him. There's an
They're like, it's
ambulance.
perfect. That's what
There's
we
a
want.
there's an ambulance driving up the beach, and then this AD pulls out a megaphone and goes, "Okay, people, that's lunch." And I was just like, "Get me off this beach, man. This is just." But you see, that's the beauty of it is even that gave me an understanding of the absolute chaos of what that must have been. And we had this in United 93. The fact that those guys couldn't leave. They couldn't
Right.
go, just give it, hang on, we're going to have some lunch. Just give us a minute. Give us a minute. When they were in it, they were in it, you know? And some of them, the ones who didn't die, it was hours, or like a day or 2 days before they could go and look up and catch their breath and go, okay, that's behind us. Where do we go now?
That's right.
You know?
What's our next? What's our next objective?
What's our next play? Where are we going?
well,
You
and
know?
let me tell you this, when some of them came off, and even the ones that came off, day 2, day 3,
Yeah.
they came off and they walked right into the graves. And they moved those, not long after they realized we can't have these temporary graves right here at the
No.
beachhead.
Right.
And so they did move them to St. Mary Glees. But I mean, for a while, these guys were walking off the beach straight into these temporary graves. I
Right.
mean,
It was horrific. Oh, it's horrific. It must have been horrific.
So,
And
your part playing the radio man. So
Right.
you didn't have to run across the beach.
no.
Is it
I was
possible?
discovered. I was
Oh,
discovered
no,
where I was.
meaning it's not that we're going to find, if you go through a fine tooth pin, through the movie, we're not going to be
Right.
able to find Corey Johnson running across the beach.
No, you won't. That's what I'm saying. They came to me because they Tom Hanks's brief was you have to get to the beach. You have to what did it say? You have to report what the condition is. In other words, they're going to be landing somewhere. We're going to blow this thing open and we're going to roll the ships in. And so that's what you mentioned a scene when Tom Sizemore's helmet flips off.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching them shoot that
Yeah.
scene.
Oh, wow.
And well, I was standing just behind the camera and I remember going, that probably wasn't a good take. And then Spielberg just really calmly said, okay, nice. He said, Tom, remember when you do such and such and this and that, and keep your voice going because there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of noise. Okay. And let's just do one more. And he does one more, and it's absolutely flawless. And he says, okay, great, we got it. That was his security. He knew the one with the helmet coming off was the one he was going to use. I believe that. I believe he saw that and he didn't want to say anything because a shot like that is a miracle. You have to understand when something like that happens, occurs, and you manage to get it on film and it's in focus, you go, please, God, please let there not be a hair in the gate. Please let it be in focus. Please, all this. But you have to still go, let's get one more for security in case it doesn't work.
Yeah, because you never know. You can look out, that's the thing I learned as a director. You can look at what's happening with the actors and outside of the camera. And everybody's acting and all the things you see outside of the camera can be flawless.
Perfect. Right.
And then something with the audio or something with, a hair in the camera or something.
Or a bird craps on someone's shoulder.
Something like that. And you get in post and you're like, oh my gosh, it ruined that perfect take.
And I don't have anything else.
And I don't have a backup. Yeah. You always have to shoot it again. Yeah.
And that you see, this is the brilliant thing about Steven Spielberg. I think look, I've worked with him once. So, and I didn't get to chat with him much. I just got to say hello a little bit, but watching him work, you realize he knows what he's going to do. He knows what he wants to do. He doesn't have to tell anyone, this is what I know. He just gets people who do their jobs. And when he says, there were sometimes half a dozen cameras running at the same time on this beach. There were handheld cameras. There were all different kinds of cameras, all of them. Janusz, I think it was Janusz who shot it. Scrubbed lenses, really, really stark, no coatings, no, just scrubbed lenses and looking as raw as possible, looking as much like a cinematic version of a human eye, nothing protected, nothing there was nothing, when they put a coating on a lens, it gives you the luxury of being able to go and sit back. This, when you watch Private Ryan, you're going, it's like you watch it with a little bit of horror. Not like you watched Apocalypse Now,
or a lot of horror if you're
like but me. The thing about it is there were so many other things at play
right there.
Yeah,
there were so many other things at play with that movie. I watched the first sequence. Private Ryan came out when we were in, I believe we were in Morocco shooting The Mummy. We may have just been back. I think we were just back. We were in London. It was like July '98, and it must have either just come out or something, June '98. The producers got a copy of it, and we watched it. And I'm sitting with a guy who was a South African actor who was wounded in a war in South Africa, and literally watched the first bit of that movie like this is a big guy. Watched the first bit of that movie like this. And I didn't know if he was praying or just couldn't watch it, but he couldn't talk about it. Didn't come out going, man, that was realistic. Man, that was this. That. He just went and it was like, it was too much. It was too much. And it's amazing for a man who, I don't know how he knows war, who didn't serve, wasn't really come close to it, but had no fear, no trepidation about asking what would be really hard questions about something and literally saying, I am not a guy who knows. I am a guy who wants to know what you know. I want to tell this story. I believe this. I want to tell this story. I need to tell your story, and I need you to tell it to me so I can tell it to people,
Well, and I've learned from veterans. I've learned a lot of veterans say about Saving Private Ryan when they went the first time that it was that movie that got them to start talking, actually.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I've heard that also.
I don't understand that. But John, listen, you've been like going off on a tangent. So I'm going to pull you right back on.
Please keep doing that.
And
Tangent is my middle name.
I know. I just want you to answer the question really simply. And then we need to move on to the next minute.
Right.
So when you had your time, your moment in the sun, you basically were just sitting on a beach. They put you on a beach. Tell me exactly what you had to do when it was your time to shoot. I want to know from the beginning to the end. What was your day of shooting like? Did it take 1 day, 2 days? Like, give me what you had to do, please. Well, as you can tell, we went down a lot of rabbit holes in this episode. There was so much to cover, so much to unpack in the making of Saving Private Ryan. And with Corey's incredible experiences, well, we just couldn't stop talking. So, as you heard at the very end there, I asked him a really interesting question. And if you want to hear his answer, you're going to have to join us for the next episode to hear his full answer to my question and catch the rest of our conversation about this pivotal moment in the film. Thank you so much for listening to Documentary First, where we believe everybody has a story to tell, and you can be the one to tell it. Bye, everybody. Follow Documentary First on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. This podcast was produced by Documentary First, edited and mixed by Jason Hoban, with music by Jeff Kurtenacker.